Hello there. So today we're going to talk about roads and how to create them with splines using the spline tool that the Unreal Editor offers. We're going to utilize the Fortnite assets that are available, which is the road straight, the road one split, the T section, and the Y split. So these intersections, we're going to be discussing how to add them. And also one more, which is for whatever reason, it's not added in the library, which is the four-way, which you see here in the view. Let's get to it. So I've opened up Photoshop. Before we get into creating the roads, I just wanted you to see what these splines are all about. And splines that are in Unreal use a technology called Bezier Curves. It's an algorithm more than a technology. It's more of a mathematical algorithm that precisely gives you curves, and it mathematically interpolates the control points to give you nice smooth curves. So for example, here you would create a control point. When you select another control point, you can see that it creates something in the middle called segments. This will be your road, quote unquote. And if you keep going and use these handles, which you will see, by the way, in the Unreal Editor, it has the same thing, same type of, you can see how it curves. And if we go to these handles, you can start adjusting the curve. And this is the exact way that Unreal does it. Okay, you can, it's more like this, and you can handle them like that and start curving it that way, however you see fit. But this same functionality is what Unreal gives you. So what this does in the Unreal Editor is that they'll take the spline, the Bezier curve information, and whatever mesh you give it to, whatever mesh you load the spline to, it'll deform the mesh along its lines and interpolates the meshes, deforms it according to the curve information. And so that's why it's a nice fit for roads, makes it really easy to create roads this way. But it's not limited to roads, it can be applied to fences or walls, what have you. It doesn't matter what the mesh is, it'll just deform the mesh, basically copy the mesh and just duplicate it along the curve, deformed, and gives you that nice smooth look. So we'll head back to the editor and we'll start creating the road. Okay, the first thing we want to do is we're going to set up the splines. So go up to the top, landscape. You see our layers here. This right here is the landscape layer, or that ground. So we're going to click here on create new layer and select splines. So once you select splines, you'll have these controls here. You can select all the splines, only the selected ones, control points and segments. You can leave that like that. And then you'll notice you have a crosshair here as the mouse. So now you're able to add control points to your map. So we can like look at the landscape here. And we're just going to do a straight road from here. Hold down control and click, and you'll see the first slot there. If you go to details, you'll see this is a control point, and you have a few details here, which we'll get into soon. We're just going to create a one straight road first. Then hit control again wherever you want. Let's just do it straight. And there would be our first. Let's move this a little bit like that. So there's our first road. If you click on this area here, this is the segment composed of 2 points. The first one, control point 0, and control point 1. So as you create your roads, you'll be creating control points along the way. Control points are important because that's where you will be able to create your intersection. Okay, so control points control how your path will look. You can see here in the details panel of the controls, you have the ability to set the width, which is the half width, and this half width is determined by the mesh that you will use. So when we add our Fortnite roads, they have a specific size, and we're going to adjust this to that spec. However, if you do create custom meshes, you will have to determine what the width is when you're creating them. And we'll get into that in other videos, how to do custom roads. But for now, we're just going to deal with the Fortnite roads. All right, so we're going to start with the segment. Let's select that. You'll see it highlighted in orange, Landscape Spline Segment 0. If you go to Landscape Mode, Paint, you're going to see that the landscape has a material that you created with it. In my case, I added I think is the default landscape, and each of them always have these layers, and one layer would be some dirt, stones, sand, street, and they're named by default layer 1, layer 2. And so what you can do is you can have the spline react to the material that you assign it to. So for example, if you go back to manage and you select the segment again and go to landscape deformation, under layer name, if you put, let's say, layer 1, you can see that the spline will deform the landscape painting, and it'll add whatever material you assign it to. So in this case, it was layer 1, which was that dirt. Then you have another one that's another type of dirt. You can keep going. Layer 3, that's the sand. Layer 4, which is the gravel. So for this, we're just going to try the dirt. We'll add that there. Actually, let's choose layer 1 so it can match this down here. All right, so you got that. We're using the layer 1 texture for the fall off here. Okay, now that we have our texture that we want as the fall off, we want to control that and see if we can like give it more or less. And to do that is you have to use the control point. So if you select the control point here, go to the details panel, you'll see the side fall off, and you'll have left side fall off factor and a few other options for that. So if you go to the left side fall off, just put 0 here, look at the left side, you can see the left side went all the way close to the edge. If you want to do this side over here, you would have to click on this control point and put 0 there as well. And you can see how that closes the texture very close to the edge, right? And you can do the same thing on this side. Go here, select the other one, put 0, and there you can see how you can control that fall off. If we go back and put them at what they were, let's just go back here, undo that, and start changing the side fall off. So if we go 0 here, and we click on the other segment and we hit 0 here, you can see that the fall off is completely gone here, and you have it really tight to the pathway. And here in the half width, you can of course set the size. You'll have to do it for both control points. Let's say you want to go 500. If you wanted to do all of them, you would just hit control points here. It selects them all, and then you can say 250. And it'll adjust all the control points for you. And you can see here how we have those Bezier handles like we showed in the Photoshop example right here. And we can we'll mess with those as we do more paths. For now, let's just keep it as they are. Okay, now if you notice, on each of these control points, there's grass on top, but not inside here. The reason it's not in the middle here is because on our segment, we had assigned the layer name layer 1. And so what that does is it removes this whole area of the grass and puts whatever texture you wanted it to be. So that's cool. But here you can still see them on top. And the reason for that is the end fall off. So each of these control points have a end fallout, as you see right here, a fall off. And right now it's currently at 2000. If I put 0, you can see this goes down and now there is no fall off. You can do the same thing with our control point over here. Put 0 and you can see it removes the fall off as well. So now they're all tight surrounding this pathway. So for the layer width ratio, if you go half of this, as it is right now, 0.5, you'll see that the landscape grass starts coming in a bit and leaves it in the middle there. So it width factor that lets you blend the edges really nicely. If you wanted to, you can go 0.25, or you can go completely 0 and it will just cover the entire thing. We'll just leave it at 1 for now. So let's set the fall off to, say, let's select all the control points and the fall off will lose 650. There you go. So we can see the path a bit better there. And if you deselect the path or you go to selection mode, you can see that it allows you to do just regular paths without any road or any mesh. You can use it this way and it'll be perfectly fine. Let's go back to the selection landscape mode. All right. So now let's add our mesh. Okay, so let's see what meshes we're going to be working on. So I have here the 4 that we're going to work on. These are the Fortnite meshes that are provided in the library. If you look at the content drawer right here, it's under Fortnite environment, landscape, spline meshes. You have a series of meshes here. We're just going to focus on the straight, the split, which is straight, and then it just comes out through here. Notice the points. We're going to get into that soon, the connect points. T-section, which has 3 of them right here, and then the Y-split, which has 3 as well. But this one is straight, and then one goes to the left, one goes to the right in a diagonal way. So we're going to be adding those. We're going to start with our straight. And the first thing you want to do is you want to look at the size. Okay, so let's focus on the straight. This is what we're going to add first. It has 2 connect points right here. These are in the socket manager. You can see them. These are placed here. And this is what allows the spline to connect to. So these are very important, and mathematically they have to be correct and aligned with the mesh that you're using. In this case, this mesh is 1024 by 1189 long. So 1024 wide, 1189 long, and then 187 in its height. Notice that there's a little curve how they made this. So the 1024, we're going to take that, and if you remember the half width property in the details panel, we're going to head over there now and then adjust the spline to this mesh and add it. All right, so let's minimize this. Let's go back to our path, and we're going to select the segment. And down here, you're going to see something called landscape spline meshes. You're going to see spline meshes here that holds an array. We're just going to hit the plus, add a new index, a new item. And in this item, they have a mesh property that we can set. There we go. So you can see it better. So we're just going to select our road straight, which is this one right here. Okay, so we added our road. And now let's look at the width here. So in order to control the width, you have to select the control point. So let's select all the control points here. And under half width, we're just going to put 1024 divided by 2, which is 512. And that will adjust to the mesh, the width of the mesh, right? Now let's select the segment and let's look at the scale to width. So basically what it says here, whether to scale the mesh to fit the width of the spline or not. And we do not want to do that in this case. We want the spline to adjust to the mesh's width. So we're just going to toggle this off. Notice it scales up a bit, and that's the true size of the mesh. And this is important when we start adding the T-sections and Y-splits. All right, so let's add one more straight here. So what you're going to do is you're going to, wherever you want to continue the road, you select the control point where you want to continue, hit control, and click again. So now there's one more segment. So if we select here, we'll have another segment. We got 2 now, and we have 3 control points. So that's control point 2. It starts at 0, 1, 2. So this is what we got here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to add an intersection here. So to add one, you simply select the control point. With the control point selected, go to the details panel, and under mesh, add our mesh. So what we want to use is we want to use the Y split. This one right here. There we go. And there you can see the Y split added. If you look closely, it's pretty aligned there. It just has that grass now. We have to configure this control point and the mesh so it can handle the landscape deformation. All right, so now we're going to continue with the Y split, and we're going to add more roads. So if you remember, when we looked at the Y split here, we have 3 connect points here. And so what this means is it lets you add control points from this point on, or this point on, or this one down here. So if you look at the mesh right here, we have a control point that's connected to the bottom of that mesh. And now we have this control point here, which will allow us to continue to the right or left. So if we select the control point and hit control out here, you can see that it uses that segment that we saw here, that road connect, and it lets you add from there. And we can do the same thing on this side. So just select the main control point of that Y split or the intersection, and then click on this side. So we're just going to adjust it a little bit here. And we're just going to put it something like that. There we go. By the way, if you are moving this around and you hit R, it kind of adjusts to the orientation where it's going, which is really nice and convenient sometimes. You want to just rotate it to a different direction. That kind of adjusts the road a bit. So we're just going to kind of do them like that. There we go. And let's see it from the top here. Let's make this a little longer then. Okay, now that we got our roads off the Y split, let's fix the Y split here. You can see all that grass on top. Just select the control point. You can just select the entire thing, and it'll be, this is the control point now because we added that mesh earlier. Now we're just going to add our texture that we want to deform, and that way we got a clean road now. All right, so let's keep adding more to this road. So over here, we're going to add another one, and let's see what we got. Let's do the road split. There we go. And that's going to split off to somewhere else. So with the control point selected, just click off and add a new road. Then click the control point again to continue this road right here. All right, nice. And we're going to go to this spot right here. So this particular road right here, I'm going to end it here. So it's going to be the end of the road for this part here. So to do that, just select the control point and scroll up and look for the fall offs that we have here towards the top in the details panel. And in the end fall off, let's just do a 2000 like it had originally. There we go. So that's going to end that area there. We can add more if we want, 4000. Here we can adjust a little bit. So it could be inside the terrain a little bit. We're going to end that there. Let's go back here. And in this split road here, select the control point and let's add the layer 1, clean up that grass. Okay, now let's go back to this road here and let's add another intersection. Click on the control point. Let's see, let's add a T section. There we go. Let's look at the T section here. So now let's add some roads to this with the control point selected. Let's put one on the right. Select the control point again of the intersection and do one on the left. And now we have a segment here, control point, and another segment created. Let's go to this control point here and take the layer, take the grass out, set that layer so it can clean it up. And there we go. All right. Okay, now that we have pretty much used up all our intersections, we have one more that we're going to add today, and it's the 4-way road. Now, for whatever reason, this is not included in the Fortnite library. We have everything else but that. One that goes left, right, down, and up. So notice we don't have that. So we're going to add that now. In order to do that, we're going to need a custom mesh. I have provided the custom mesh in a link in the description. You can download it and follow this section now. Okay, so how I created the 4-way, I just took the T mesh here and looked at it in the viewer right here. I looked at the wireframe. It took me a minute to recreate, but I was able to do it in Blender. So the first thing I did was, if you look at the profile here, we just want to take this background out, because when I go to wireframe, you see how you can't really see it. But if you go to Window, Preview Scene Settings, see Profile FN, I just do this. You can do it a different way, but just turning this off. Now, if I go to wireframe, I can see it a lot clearer what the mesh looks like. And just looking at it here, you can see that where the road connect 2 is, it's curved. Where the road connect 1 is, you can see that it's curved right there. And then the road connect 3, you can see how it's curved right there. However, on this side, it does not have any curves. I don't know if you can see that. This little curve here, these little dents, if you look at when it's lit, it's kind of, there has like a little curve right here, okay? And that is what allows it to connect it to the straight. Once it's connected, it's kind of seamless and it has a little indent on the turns. But yeah, so this T model does not have this prepared on this side. So that's what I did here. So if you look at my Blender file, I kind of mimicked how they made the mesh using their width and height size. I was able to recreate it and then just apply that same curve on all sides. And this is what I'll be importing to Unreal. Again, this file will be available in the description box. Just go ahead and download it. All right, so we're going to export this. Okay, and right here, we're just going to export that FBX. I have a preset here for my static files. all I do is just select mesh. That's all I want to export. Make sure these are aligned like this, and then the geometry, just make sure smoothing is on face, and you can have apply modifiers on. Everything else doesn't really matter. You can click this off if you want the animation, and just hit export. With that done, you see our file here, mesh 4-way road section, the FBX file. We're going to import that to Unreal. Okay, back in Unreal, we're going to open the content drawer. I'm going to drag in my exported FBX model, and I'll have it in this models folder. So I'm just going to drag it. It's going to give you some FBX options panel shows up. And here we're going to not create the material and not import any textures. We're just going to strictly import the mesh. We will be using the Fortnite road material on it. So let's just import that. All right, and then double click so we can see it. Here she is in all its glory. And what we're going to do now is we're going to set up the points that you see in these Fortnite assets. You see how they created these points. So let's take a look at it in the socket manager here. You can see them listed. You see the location 594. Basically what that is 1229 divided by 2. Okay, and so when you first create a socket, it'll start at its center point 0, 0 right here. So if we go here and we create a new socket, let's call it socket 1, you're going to see that 0, 0. Now in this particular mesh, the size is 1189 by 1189. So we're going to go on the, let's start with the X right here. And we're going to go 1189 divided by 2. And you can see that that goes straight to the right here. And the X, this is important here, the X is pointing outwards. And all our sockets must be pointing outwards with the X for this to work, okay? You can look at the other ones for the examples if you want. You can see how they have them always pointing out like that. So let's go back here, and that will be our first socket. We're going to add another one, call it socket 2. Just to let you know, the names do not matter. You see how they have road connect. You can do the same, but it really doesn't matter what name you put here. The location matters. So in this particular case, we have our socket 1. We can increase the size of this. I noticed that the Fortnite ones have it as well. And all that does is increases the icon here, so it's just easier to select instead of that little thing there. So on our socket 2, we're going to go the opposite. So this one went half forward. We're going to go back, negative. And we want it over here. Let's increase the scale there. And then we're just going to go negative 594.5. So that's going to go all the way to the other side. And remember, we want to rotate this so that the X is pointing outwards. And let's go to our relative rotation under Z and just go negative 180. And that ensures the X pointing outwards. So we have our first socket, second socket. Now we're going to go on the Y. So this is the X. We're going to go on the Y here, add a new one, socket 3. And on the Y, we're going to do the same, 594. Notice how it goes here. We'll have to make sure that this X is pointing the right way. There you go. X is pointing outwards. Now we do the same, the opposite, right? We'll copy this and add our fourth socket. And in our Y, we're just going to go negative. Okay, so here we have to make sure that our X is pointing outwards. So that should be, I believe, negative 90. There you go. So now we have all our sockets in place. Let's increase the scale of this just to be consistent. And this one too. All right. So now that we got that, we'll save. And we're going to go back out to this. And now we're going to replace the T mesh that we have here with our 4-way. All right, so to do that, just make sure you have the intersection or the control point selected. Go to details, scroll down a bit until you see the mesh. And here we're gonna, I think it's 4-way. There we go. Select our mesh. Okay, so now we have our mesh added here. And so what we're gonna do next is add a material to this. So like I mentioned earlier, we're gonna use the Fortnite road, which is really good. And it works really well with this setup. So why not use it? In order to do that, we'll have to create a material instance of the Fortnite material. So right click anywhere here next to your mesh, however you want, go down to material, material instance, and let's call this MI 4-way road. Like that. Double click it. You're going to get the material window. And on the details panel, where it says parent, we're going to use the road material as the parent base. And so click on the drop down and look for T section or road right here. And you see this MI road T junction. We're going to use this one. Okay. And that gives us the road. There you see it. Already set up for us. Let's hit save and minimize this. Go back here and under material overrides with the control point still selected, we're going to add a slot for a material and select our MI 4-way right there. And there you have it. The material is really nice what they made, and it fits perfectly. You see the other side here. Let's look at that. Nice. So with that, let's add a new road. So make sure you have the control point selected, control click, and there it is. Your 4-way road. Pretty seamless too. All right, so with that added, let's look at terrain deformation. Let's lift it up and so you can see what it actually does here. So let's look at the control point here. In our details panel, we have a few options here. So if you remember the layer name in the landscape deformation, we set up the texture so it can clean that up there on the road. But you also have these raised terrain and lower terrain. So basically what those are, if you hit W here to move it up, let's move it up a bit. So you can see how the landscape lifts up with it. However, you can not have that happen by toggling these options off. So what we're going to do is we're going to select this segment over here and we're going to just click these off. Okay. So if you notice, that road now is not lifting the terrain. You might want to have it like this, but just so you know, that's an option. We can select our control point, do the same. So if we look down here, sorry, there we go. You can see how it does not lift the landscape with it. So those are a few options you have to maybe you want the roads going up mountains, etc. This is the way to do it. So now what we're going to do is we're going to connect all these roads and see, so you can see how that all works. So we're going to start over here and we're going to connect this with this one over here. So make sure you have your control selected where you want to continue and hit control click. Since we lifted this up over here, it's hitting the ground that I have down there. So we're just going to lift this up a little bit. Hit W. There you go. One thing to note is these handlebars, the Bezier handlebars. So what you can do is you can start curving it more if you want with those handles. Each segment has them, and you can adjust as you go if you need to. So let's go continue this right here. We're going to loop this back here. So select this control point, and then another one. You can see how it's curving. Let's curve it a little bit more and click on the control point, and you can see how it connects to the road. And then of course the handlebars let you adjust the curvature of it. You can see here how I can adjust it. Let's leave that there, that's fine. Let's go over here. All right, so now let's connect these two here. So we're just going to make sure you select the one you want to continue with, control click right there. We got to lift this up a little bit. So let's do that. There we go. And maybe a little higher over here. There. And we're just going to keep going and go around like that. And finally click on where you want it to connect to. And there you have it. So let's look at from the top. There's your road. Okay, and there you have it. And that's all I have for today. Thank you for watching.